But basically, Dropwizard was a technology invented by Coda Hale. He worked at Yammer. He's their chief architect, and it was basically came together to create like glue between all these established Java packages to create REST JSON services in like the fastest way possible. So it's like not a lot of mystery. So so there is no application server. It spins up in a Java main class. So like it spins up a Jetty instance in that. So you don't have to deal with tuning of application servers, deploying to application servers. Basically, if you have Java installed on a machine, you can just run the entire application, which is cool because application server deployment takes up like 90% of my time. So, okay. All right, so your old pal Java, your arch nemesis, enterprise Java. You know, production-ready services are arduous to build and take a long-ass time, right? I don't know how many people are Java developers here. Have a show of hands. We got one. We got two. Three.
I drink Java in the morning.
Enterprise Java is also, it's very complicated. There's usually a war, it's application server specific. I'm dealing with an application now where like they just shoved like WebSphere jars into the application. So when trying to rewrite it, you have to just deal with all this application server specific code. Large web applications create technical debt. You end up with this EAR file with many different technologies that don't play well with application servers that also have the same jar files included, maybe different versions. So a lot of configuration. Like I said, configuration is verbose and expensive, many points of failure, and difficult to maintain. Just at the end, Spring Hibernate stack is like the big stack. And now there's Spring Boot, which I won't really go into because that would probably take the entire rest of the presentation. But Spring would be the other Java way to create REST services, but it can do a lot more than Dropwizard. But it requires more knowledge. It's a much larger framework, and it's built to do a lot more than just create REST services. So probably it's more of a learning curve, it's a different animal. All right, so this is where lightweight dynamic frameworks, Ruby on Rails, Sinatra, Python, Express, Node.js. I'm going to put that as a topic for another time because it's a hard one to argue as Express and Node.js are relatively new to the game. From my experience with Node.js, is it's still not completely fully baked, whereas they're switching, syntax, and maybe it possibly could be faster, but the ease of development is not the same as a Dropwizard. So elegant, powerful, readable, concise, easy to learn, like Ruby on Rails. You can learn it in 30 milliseconds, and then put all these Ruby gems in, and then you can immediately create a REST framework. It's high development speed and faster time to market, but very slow, 10 times slower than Java. You could do some research on speeds. It's interpreted, not compiled, of course. Python and Rails use a lot of memory, and Rails is hard to deploy and requires more application servers, and Rails has actually failed in many production environments. I know a lot of Rails developers will argue against that, maybe, but I don't personally believe Rails is extremely production-worthy in very large scale. Any questions yet? All right. Okay, is there a better way? Why, of course. Why else would you be listening to me? Dropwizard, better software helps. Java doesn't suck, you're just using it wrong. So basically Java is known as this big, large beast. And it doesn't really have to be that anymore. It's been pared down. So it was developed by Yammer, Coda Hale to power their JVM-based backend services. Basically pulls all these like different, and I'll go into them, like already fully established, very fast and very streamlined packages, and he kind of just created like the glue to make it easy to use them. And then a Dropwizard application can handle 25,000 to 50,000 requests per second, so it's very scalable, and its package is what they call a fat jar now, or a fat shaded jar, so all the dependencies are in a jar.
What's shaded?
It's basically, it makes it so there's no other dependencies get into the jar, like it doesn't look at anything else outside of itself.
Oh, so that's what shaded?
Yeah.
Still needs a JRE.
It needs just a Java install. That's it. Yeah.
I've never heard shaded.
So basically, you run it on the command line like you would like your first thing in Computer Science 101, Java, and then you run it, and it spins up the Jetty server inside of itself. And also, it offers automatic updates of the technology stack, which I'll get into now. All right, no, first, I guess, overview of technologies. All right, so I'm not sure how much you guys know about this, but Jetty is like the supreme Java application server. It has a very light footprint. There's like, it doesn't require much tuning, especially in the Dropwizard version. They do the tuning before they release of Dropwizard. So there's no like perm gen issues, application server configuration and maintenance, arcane development tools. Like you don't even need, a continuous integration version would be just literally copying it and then running Java on the jar file. There's no application logs, no single garbage collector to work with. Multi-threading is handled because almost all classes in Dropwizard are immutable. So that's how they get by the multi-threaded issue. And it also allows you to use not normal Unix process management and metrics tools instead of like having to bring in other process management. And then Jersey is the REST piece. So there is Spring MVC, CXF. Jersey is a really good one. I guess in the Coda Hale's mind, as far as performance, it's the best one. It uses the JAX-RS specification, and once I get to that portion, like you'll notice it's all annotated. You could write them at like lightning speed. So Jersey is good. Yes.
Good question. Can you switch out the technologies if you want?
No, that's one of Dropwizard's negatives. Or if you do it it's like comes as like a finished like package. Like you can't be like I want to use CXF instead of Jersey.
Is that an advantage?
I think it's an advantage. Well, I mean, the whole point of it is to make it so you could let's say you get a dev group, you're like, we need to like crank out like 50 Java services in a month. So you don't have to worry about technologies, application server tuning, even performance tuning. Like this lets you just write the code, deploy it, and you create one jar, but in theory you can create multiple jars and then use a load balancer to even handle more. So Guild Group, I know they kind of got on a downswing, but when they were big, they wrote their applications in Dropwizard, and they would just, as they had only like 1 hour of like really crazy time when people were buying all their goods, so they would just spin up like many Dropwizard jars and then ramp them down to save money because they wouldn't be in use. So we use Jackson for JSON, which is king of the JVM. It is really fast. I use it even in Spring. Sophisticated object mapper, but you basically don't have to do anything. You don't have to annotate it. It just kind of figures it out. And it allows you to export your domain models directly. A big thing for Dropwizard, I didn't write it though, all your POJOs should really be immutable as well, so to also not run into multi-threading issues. And then there's metrics. So of all the things that people that don't use Dropwizard, a lot of people use Yammer's metrics package outside of Dropwizard. So they do, and this is probably the least thing I've actually used, but it does offer really good full stack visibility and JVM level metrics, and it's pretty easy to plug in. I think, as I go further in the Dropwizard world, metrics is something that I will work with more. It's one of those things where on a professional level, other than startups, Dropwizard doesn't, most people don't approve the usage, so I don't get to use a lot of metrics with it. And then there are the Dropwizard friends. JDBI is an interface-based SQL tool, so it's an ORM, but you don't have to implement the interface, which I'll get into later. It's a lot less complex than Hibernate and very easy to implement, which I'll go through. And a lot of these other technologies, Guava, Logback, SLF4J, Apache HTTP client, FreeMarker. Like I said, these are the the fastest and the best technologies or plug-in jars that already exist, and he just like glued them together in a nice way. All right, so this is the best part. So usually in a POM file, you have a million dependencies. You got to make sure they don't conflict with each other. But basically for Dropwizard, there are a few more packages if you get real. It is more expansive than what I'm going to show you. But with just the Dropwizard core, it pulls in all these different technologies. That's it. You don't have to deal with anything. They have a version of Dropwizard. They know that it's all compatible. All the technologies are compatible with each other. So you don't have to worry with any compatibility issues, which is often a pain in the butt. Okay, so now we'll get into the actual implementation. So the beginning is a Dropwizard configuration class. So each service has its own subclass of the configuration class, which basically pulls in a YAML file, deserializes it, and then it makes it available to your application. So in this example, I'm making like a simple database application that goes to a database, pulls out users, and then sends them via JSON through a REST service. So basically, it's taking these JSON properties database and it's creating a data source factory. And I'll show you the configuration file now. Okay, so database is already part of the Dropwizard world. So this, I don't know how many people have used YAML before. It stands for yet another markup language. So it's indentation based. So if we go back here, I'm telling it to look for database. So it looks for database and then rips all these configurations. You don't have to use all of them. There's probably 100 more if you want to, but it pulls that in and sets up this configuration class that you have available to you.
You still call it properties files?
I don't know. I guess you would call it. That's what I call it. It could be more my nomenclature.
I had to say nomenclature, but I don't think it is. I think it's just YAML.
I think it is. Yeah, you might be right.
Properties files are specified. Properties files are exactly not.
All right. Well, that could be wrong. I agree. I don't know. Maybe it was stuck in my brain. But they are in essentially configuration files. I guess would be a better word. All right. So the application class is the core of the Dropwizard application. This is what basically is what's run when Dropwizard starts. It pulls together various bundles and commands which provide the basic functionality. So here, if we look at this is the run method. There's an initialize method, various other things, but in the run method is where, so you have your user configuration, which we just saw up here, already populated as it starts. So I do various things. First, I have a database health check, which I will show you, and you'll notice all these things are final. And then in the environment, which is here, without blocking, I just register the health check in the environment. Then I create, so this is JDBI specific. You don't have to use JDBI, but if you're going to do database stuff with Dropwizard, they now have a pretty good Hibernate plugin, but JDBI is a much more simple version. So it's building the JDBI factory, and then it's pretty much registering it with Jersey with my user resource, which I will get to next, and passing in the data access object. Does that make sense? Cool.
And the reason you're using final there is because you don't want that to change?
Yeah, you don't want this. You never want this to change. This is just setting up like the initial context of this application. And so basically here I registered a health check and one object. One data access object here. You could register custom classes and whatnot.
Are there more tools? So you have public void run there. Are there other arguments you can use, or is it just that one? Or there's two arguments?
Well, args is like the typical Java main where it just pulls anything. So if you go to dropwizard.com, there's like a listing of the different arguments you could pass to when you start up a Dropwizard jar, and it would pull them through that array.
But that method there, user configuration environment, you have to have those two?
Oh yeah, well it doesn't have to be user configuration, but it's basically whatever you called your configuration class. Yeah, so it could be any sort of configuration with, like this is a very kind of simple YAML file. You could have like lines and lines and lines of configuration if you want. Like HTTP client, custom ones. Okay. All right, so the Dropwizard Resource Class, which is pretty much the controller. The meat and potatoes of a Dropwizard service. Each resource class is associated with a URI template. Resource classes are used by multiple threads concurrently. In general, we recommend that the resources be stateless and mutable, but it's important to keep context in mind. So this is like, if anyone's ever written a Java, JAX-RS controller before, or service, or whatever you call it, resource, they look pretty much the same. So at the top, I set the path that I'm going to use. All right, so a big thing here that you'll notice is, so out of the box, Dropwizard doesn't have independency injection. So you actually have to, make sure that it knows what it's getting. So a lot of people use Google Juice or Spring also. You can integrate Dropwizard with Spring, but then you're bringing in Spring. So when I've done dependency injection, it's been with Google Juice, which is a little more simple and it doesn't involve the whole Spring package. And then this is just a simple get. So the path is user. It's getting a list of user objects, which I didn't include here, but imagine a normal Java POJO with name, age, blah, blah, blah. And it's just returning find all. And it will stream that to the front end. All right, so this has actually two classes. So this is now back to like the database portion, which is not Dropwizard specific, but I don't know if you've used JDBI. It's simple. It's kind of similar to how my Batis is now. Hello. So the top is just, this would be a very simple user, very simple DAO. It has one method called findAll. The query is select star from user, and the mapper is userMapper.class.
Can you go back a slide?
Sure.
So what this code is doing is setting up, there's a path called user_res, so user_res/user
Yeah.
would do something. So, and I see there are the annotations that have cache control and that it returns content type JSON. How? So all this is all you need to serialize a get HTTP request against /user_res/user?
From a database.
So how does this know how to serialize an instance of user?
So it has JSON plugged in, which you usually have to configure, but it's pre-configured. So you have to make the POJO, but JSON doesn't need annotated
So in
POJO.
this case, you have a list of users. So user is the POJO.
Yes.
And it automatically knows, like, if it's a type string, do this and things like that.
That's
It
based-
used,
That's
yeah.
based from the YAML?
No, like JSON itself, it can figure out as long as like you don't use crazy names and it can pretty much, as long as it follows like the JSON structure you want, it can figure out from just a non-annotated POJO like what to do. However, yes.
So yeah, so does it have like a default behavior? Say you have a date type in your object.
Yes.
It will know to convert that to standard UTC.
No, so it would use your database format, but you could then like off of a JSON object, you could do more. Like so in JSON, so let's say you wanted to do different behaviors in your POJO, you could put JSON annotations. Let's say you wanted to like transform a date to a certain.
So what say it's a standard I don't know what database in a SQL server or a SQL or which database. So we get a date back from our database.
Okay.
It's in database format. Are we serializing what comes back from the database or the object that we serialize into when we do the call?
You're getting back what the object that you serialize into.
Okay. Which I would have thought would have been like a date representation in Java.
It will convert it. I mean, it's not going to show it in Post like this. I use Postgres. I don't know why, because it's one of my most hated databases. But it will JSON. I mean, JSON has a default conversion type.
Okay.
But if you wanted to change it, you can annotation-based change.
Okay. What would we get? If we just straight out of the box, without figuring what sort of JSON string you get.
I think by default it's date.string, which I do not remember what that is.
Yeah, I would.
Bet you could add an annotation that says instead of using date.string,
Yeah.
use ISO 8601 or some element of normal.
And also in the YAML file, and there are like a lot of default configurations. If you want to make tweaks to certain things, you can, like character type and date type and stuff like that. And you have further control just using the Jackson annotations. But let's say like you were agnostic, you didn't really care. It could figure out a list of users with strings, dates, integers, and it will just serialize it based on your setters and getters.
So is there a way to, or this is intended to build APIs from database objects?
This example is.
Oh, okay. So there are other ways to, can you write to byte for byte to the response?
To the Jackson response?
No,
Like,
to the HTTP response.
um,
Is this more general purpose?
well, I mean, let's say, like you're saying, like if you had like a service layer and you wanted to manipulate things.
Yeah, or if you wanted to return not JSON, how would this be?
You have to return JSON. But like, let's say you didn't want to just have user.find all. Like I said, there's no dependency injection in this, but you can call a service class,
Right,
name pass,
yeah.
yeah.
Is
And
it just, oh, I'm sorry.
no worries.
So is it just you just can't serve anything but JSON, or can you do like SOAP? Not that I just want to, but.
Oh, like call it. So you couldn't create a SOAP service from this,
Okay.
but I'm sure you can call back into one, because you could. But yeah, you could call back into one, but you would never want. I mean, it's not impossible. Like that's the thing about Dropwizard, that if you only want to make REST JSON services, then this is what you use. And you want to like bang them out as fast as possible. And don't have to deploy. You don't have to worry about like a database team or maybe a data. But you don't have to worry about like an application server team or a deployment team. And a lot of like the rigorous and arduous things you have to deal with when you're creating like a full REST application. So I guess Coda Hale, like he got pissed off one day and he's like, screw it, I'm just making something that's like really easy to use to make this one thing. I've tried to email him, he never gets back to me. And also, have you ever seen his website? It's literally like written in like Times New Roman, like, this is who I am. Like he's like kind of like one of those mocking kind of guys.
Quick question. If you have an existing database, is there some feature to reverse engineer the database? Like prompt you with automatic parameters?
Well, I'm going to get to the database part right now.
Okay.
So that might answer your question, but if not, we can go further. Okay, so this is like a database query, simple. And then a mapper, which is pretty common to most ORMs now. This is where, in a super simple way, I'm mapping. So I created, let's say user is my Pojo. Name is the name of the field. And select star from user. I'm just setting it to my Java object and then returning it. Does that have anything to do with the question that you asked?
Well, it was more about if you have an existing database, would automatically create the file for you or do anything like that?
Like the YAML file?
Like the Java file.
It won't automatically create it, but you just basically in your mapper, you would map to your specific database. Yeah, so I mean the mapper is the key. It won't automatically map. JDBI is the technology, you can look into it further. Or if you wanted to do like an automatic mapping, I would say to use Hibernate, which plugs in pretty nicely with Dropwizard as well. I just try to stay clear of it just because I'm 99% used doing things that I don't need Hibernate for. So basically these are two classes. So the top one would be the DAO and the second one would be a mapper, and you're telling the DAO to use that mapper class just with that annotation. So in this case, like give me all users, and in this very simple example, I'm just going to return all their names in like a big JSON file. All right, this is very cool as well. So you can include as many health checks as you want. You basically extend health check. Also, so I'm purposefully injecting this into like the database we already got from the YAML file. And then it's simply saying if it pings it, healthy. If not, it's unhealthy. And this is running all the time. So in real time, I mean, you can do more complicated health checks. This is constantly checking the database. There is a setting where you can see how often it health checks, which is just to make sure your database is up.
when it fails the health check, is there some status or something you have to go to? How does this,
Well, how do you recover?
or how do you get notified?
Oh, it would be, I guess in this case, it would be in the log files.
Oh, it gets locked.
Yeah. So out of the box, they give you this pretty cool health check thing. So even like if you're not getting certain results that you usually expect, then you could pretty much do anything in your check that you want. In this case, it's just doing healthy or unhealthy. So this is probably the ugliest part. So this is how it creates a shaded palm, shaded jar. I mean, so that's obviously not the name of the correct class. So you just got to point it to your application class, and this, without modifying anything, will create like the Dropwizard shaded jar file, which just lives inside of itself. So now let's say now you have your jar file and it's ready to go. And then an application file, like I said, has a Java main method, which it knows to spin up Jetty, knows to parse your YAML file, get all your configurations, set itself up by registering the health check in this situation, and also setting up the database connection, which is all I'm using. But it could do anything. So you could put as many custom things in the YAML as you want.
Can you use this with other Go technologies like Gradle, or is it this is like a Maven file?
This is a Maven plugin.
Okay.
And you put it in like your pom.xml.
Okay. And you could use Dropwizard with Gradle and other technologies.
I mean, I don't know why you want to use Ant, but this is just strictly this to make the final jar. So you could use anything that you can use in Maven, like Ant plugins. You could use in.
So this Maven shade plugin thing is just to make it shady.
Exactly, they call it a fat jar is the real thing. Yeah.
Okay. So it has nothing to do with Dropwizard. You could do this. You could use this shade fat jar thing. This is hilarious. For anything.
Yes, this is not Dropwizard specific.
Cool.
But in this case, it's rare that like you would have something where you need no outer dependencies. So like a fat jar won't look for dependencies outside of itself.
Oh my gosh, RuPaul's crackers.
Never, I've heard of it though. Actually, I've seen one episode. Okay. All right, so the disadvantages portion. Like I said, limited flexibility. It's a one-trick pony, like literally. You're stuck with the technologies they decided to package in the version of Dropwizard you're using. There's nothing you can do. Because like the fat jar thing, it eliminates, like you can't be like, I want to use this version of Jackson, not that version of Jackson. So like you put like, which is, to me it's nice, because usually POM files are very long, but in this case you just import one thing, Dropwizard core, it just pulls in all these different versions that he knows. So no application server, like you just eliminated like a lot of people's jobs. So there's nothing to tune really. I'm sure there's still a guy who could do load balancing and stuff like that, but the application server people are kind of put out of business in this case. Like I've had the pain to use WebLogic, JBoss, WebSphere. They all suck. They're bad. They're huge. They're bloated. Tomcat is okay, but you don't have to worry about any of that. I think Jetty's. I mean, you can use Jetty without Dropwizard as well, and that's what a lot of people use. John Paul, like when they want to do, when you're testing like in Eclipse without having to do like constant deployments. All right, so companies that use it: Yammer, Goldman Sachs, Airbnb. There's a pretty large list.